experience for people who are using Solidity-based smart contracts as well.
That's
Is there any?
amazing. And do you have a
Well,
launch date for that?
hold on, real quick before the launch date. Is there any like what if the smart contract has a bug in it or some sort of like exploit in it? Like, is there any, does that sort of infect cross chains? Sort of, is there an issue in security in that sense, or does that get prevented somehow?
Yeah, so smart contracts always have an inherent risk because you're trusting the developer, the person that just deployed it. So by just building sidechain infrastructure, we can't guarantee that the contract you're calling doesn't have an issue. So it's up to you to do due diligence on whatever smart contract you call, and that's relevant not just for Solidity smart contracts, but also Plutus smart contracts as well. Now we're aware that Solidity in particular is really bad for accidentally making issues, but the Milkamra protocol in general will be just a way to connect the Cardano mainnet to sidechains. So for the first version, we'll be developing a kind of standard Ethereum client to get this out of the door as fast as possible, and we're aiming for end of this year for the first version on mainnet. But in the future, we can extend this project to other systems like KEVM or Yella, which are projects that IOHK has funded in the past to build systems like what you get from Ethereum, but with more safety built in, more ways to verify the correctness of your code. So if there's interest in these sidechains, and I think there will be because IOHK continues to work with runtime verification, which is their partner that's building KEVM and Yella functionality, we can in the future partner with them to deploy more sidechains. So we can have a sidechain that's Solidity directly. You can have another sidechain that's KVM and another sidechain that's Yella, and these would all be transparent to the user. You would not know in a lot of cases if you're calling a Plutus smart contract, Yella smart contract, and whatnot. And we hope that providing these options can give the users and developers different trade-offs, and also help them build in whatever language they think is fastest and gives them the easiest way to verify the correctness of their code.
Oh, thank you, Sebastian. The unsigned. What do you want us to call you, by the way? Do you want to call you the unsigned, or do you have another preferred name?
We can go with Patrick. It's fine. I'm
Awesome.
a real person.
Thank you, but I wasn't sure, like, how connected your
Oh, it's
different
all
accounts
good.
were. So, no, Sebastian, thank you for that. Do we have any other questions for Sebastian while we have him on the line? Because, he's been in the community for so long. It'd be great to get his views on our different questions.
Sebastian, you guys aren't using the KVM?
Not for the initial version, no. So IOHK, as you may know, has a client for Ethereum called Mantis. And this is a project that IOHK continues to work on. And this is the project that they used to launch the initial KEVM testnet and the Yellow testnet back in 2018, I think that was. So a while back. So that was all built off the Mantis client. Now, the Mantis client doesn't quite have the functionality set that we need for Milkama for our sidechain, but IOHK is working on it, so we may, be able to use basically their clients to be able to provide Yella and KVM functionality in the future, but this will not be used for the first version, and this is something that we are actively coordinating with IOHK on, but obviously the timeline for this depends on IOHK more than it depends on us because it's them that has to update their client and get all the required features in. So I can't give an estimate for that particular task.
So one thing about the local computation and the way that UTXO Pluto smart contracts work by actually resetting the entire state, how is composability going to work with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And this is actually something that will have to come and be improved in probably a later hard fork for Cardano. The reason why is because composability and the UTX.
Can you define composability? I don't. What do you two mean by that?
Yeah, what I assume he means by that is to be able to have some way for a smart contract execution to be able to pull state from other smart contracts that exist on the blockchain. I assume this is your question, right?
Yes. That and a little bit more, but let's stick with that.
Right. So the way this is usually done in this system, by usually I mean the only other blockchain that really implements UTXO is Ergo. So Ergo is a different blockchain created by some other people who used to work for IOHK, for people who don't know, and they were kind of prototyping ideas for smart contracts. And one idea that they came up with is this concept of a data input, which is basically you can use a UTXO entry as an input without consuming it. I know this is like super technical. Sorry for people who are not as technical. But basically, they have this functionality for data inputs, which are super critical for composability. But this functionality will not be available in the first version of Plutus that is shipping on the 12th. So there is another hard fork after Alonzo called Babbage, and that'll be the next hard fork. And IOHK is trying to figure out which features to put into that hard fork and which ones will not make it. So I'm hoping that this data input functionality makes it into the following hard fork, because I think that'll be super critical for composability of smart contracts. But I haven't been able to get confirmation from IOHK's team on whether or not they'll have time for this test.
Jaeger, what's the hand raise for?
Yeah, man. I just wanted to ask Sebastian. So I watch all of Charles's videos. I've been in the community for a few years, and Charles comes across and says things like, "We're going to eat Ethereum's lunch, and we're going to become the superior smart contract chain." What are your thoughts on this? Do you share the vision?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I spent the past few years of my life on Cardano every day is because I believe in the vision, right? I wouldn't be doing all this if I didn't. But if you want to be realistic about timelines and how all this will play out, obviously the blockchain ecosystem is no longer a small playing field, right? There's a lot of people involved and a lot of money involved, and Cardano is definitely catching up to Ethereum in a lot of ways, from market cap to developer adoption to every other metric you could possibly look at. But to get the entire developer ecosystem to come over, it'll take some time, and we'll build more tooling and more functionality. Because as I mentioned, the September 12th release is just the start of smart contracts, and there'll be much more tooling coming out and functionalities like the data inputs coming out to improve the developer experience and improve like expand what is possible with the Cardano blockchain. Now we have a bunch of advantages that will be available from day one, like the determinism of smart contract, which is a huge problem with Ethereum that we won't have. We'll have the lower fees, so we'll have a lot of advantages on day one. But the reality of the situation is that Ethereum and almost every other blockchain with smart contracts out there uses something called the accounting model. And that's not what Cardano uses. We use something called the EUTXO model. And there's only two other real blockchains that use this. One is Bitcoin, and the other one is Ergo. Now, Bitcoin's implementation of this is so limited that very, very little has been done with it. Like Tether is like, the only real use case has taken off to date. And Ergo is kind of too small of a community to really gather much data from it. So it'll be kind of a huge experiment to see if this totally different paradigm, different way of doing things will be success. And if you're asking this question as an investor in Cardano and you want to know whether or not all this will work out and whether or not you'll make money from token appreciation, in a sense you're putting a huge bet into this new technology and this totally different way of doing smart contracts, and you will hope that this new way of doing things will bring a lot of benefits. Now, Charles in his video obviously talks a lot about the benefits of this totally different way of doing things and what kind of advantages will come to it. But Cardano right now has a few thousand developers, and the next few months, we'll get to tens of thousands and hopefully 100,000 developers, in the coming years. And as this happens, a lot of the design patterns for Ethereum will not apply to Cardano, and people will have to come up with new ways of tackling problems. And it'll be super interesting to come up with, what solutions people come up with and what different trade-offs those solutions have. So there's a lot of unknown, but that's what makes it so exciting to build with. And it's not like 100% unknown. We know a lot of the advantages, that'll come with it. In the same way that when Ethereum came out originally back in 2014, they proposed this totally different way, totally different from Bitcoin, for doing this thing called smart contracts, and people were not sure if it's going to take off and if this is the right way to tackle the problems. And it turns out, they did a lot of things right, and that's why Ethereum has the market success that it has today. And Cardano is kind of in the same position. We're proposing a totally different way of doing things, and it'll be up to every individual in the Cardano community to figure out what's the best way we can use this new approach. And it's up to every individual to decide if this is a technology that they think is worth putting their money into.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Switching topics a little bit, back to the side chain that you guys are actually building, because it's going to be a true side chain with a bridge that runs Solidity. What type of consensus mechanism are you going to use for your validators?
Yeah, so right now our plan for the initial launch is to use a subset of validators on the Cardano mainnet. So basically, the way Cardano works right now is we already have a set of trusted people, right? The people who are running stake pools. And so we plan to, reach out to people who we know have some technical expertise and have shown, good skill in running this and have been good actors of the Cardano network, to kind of seed the launch of the sidechain for the first version. Now, obviously, we can't just stick with a fixed set of people. That doesn't benefit anybody. And so we're gonna try and decentralize this. And so although we will start with the initial set of people, there's gonna be a DAO to be able to rotate members in and out. And I'm sure different pools will want to come on board and participate in the sidechain. And I'm really excited to see how it's going to grow over time, and who is interested in running the sidechain with us. But obviously, for the first version, we want to get something out the door as soon as possible, because we really think that having Solidity compatibility for the Cardano ecosystem will bring a huge amount of developer adoption. And so the easiest way to get that out the door is as fast as possible, basically, is to start with a federation. And we have details about our DAO and how we plan to run this DAO inside our technical documentation. So if you go to milkomeda.com, we have technical documentation about this DAO, how it's going to work. I wouldn't say the documentation is 100% complete. There's some details that we are still discussing internally, but you'll get a pretty decent idea of how we plan to do that.
But since you're going to be running Solidity, your sidechain has to be account-based, right? It's not going to be UTXO, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's correct.
Which are you taking these Ethereum nodes, like Geth, or what do you plan on doing for the actual nodes themselves?
Yeah, so currently we're planning to run Bisu. And we'll see if that works out for us. Currently, based off our initial investigation, it has all the functionality we need. Now, as you may be familiar, the Ethereum ecosystem is plagued with dozens of nodes, all of which are missing functionalities in different ways. So we've tried all of them basically, and this is the one that we thought covered all the functionality we need for our use case. Now, as I mentioned, in the future, if we want to have this KEVM bridge or this yellow bridge, we may work with IHK to launch versions of the sidechain that uses their Ethereum client. But for the initial version, Besu is the one that we're expecting to launch with.
Cool. Sounds like it's going to be pretty compatible with Solidity out of the box. So, like I told Nico yesterday, that as soon as you guys are ready, would love to try to run a reach application on it.
Hey, so this is Nico. I can add a little bit more information.
Happy Epochs End, everyone. Sorry,
Hey,
please carry on.
Yes, happy Epochs End.
Happy
Is
Epochs
it
End. Rewards
okay?
get paid. Everyone should be happy. Sorry, who was speaking? Please carry on. That was the bell had to be rang. Unfortunately, that's the custom.
So this is Nico. I'm the co-founder of This is Part with Seba, and I can add a little bit more information about the consensus protocol that we're going to be running in the very first time for the sidechain. So we are going to be running IBFT and two. So basically, it's like a Byzantine fault tolerant protocol, and it's pretty similar to Ouroboros BFT. And some of the security assumptions are like a little bit different than proof of stake. In terms, for example, for proof of stake, you want at least 51% of the network ballpark to be non-adversarial, and everything's going to work fine. For Byzantine fault tolerant, it's a little bit higher, is 2/3 of the network, and it's a trade-off, but you get something that's pretty cool, which is like instant finality. So once you have a block that was done, that's it. You don't need to wait X amount of confirmation. So this is pretty good because we want to start with like a trusted network, and at least even if like a few people are adversarial, it needs to be like more than 1/3 of the network, which is like still a lot. And we are going to get instant finality, and this is really important because we want to give good UX. So it's important to have like fast block times in the sidechain, and that you don't need to wait for that, because that way when you run smart contracts in your sidechain, you set up a smart contract from Cardano, you're going to have a response also immediately. We are doing also other cool stuff to be able to like follow like forks in Cardano, and in a way that you won't have to wait that many blocks. So the cool thing about this is that what we have seen in other second layer solutions in Ethereum is that you need to wait a lot of time to get a response. And I think this is like pretty bad UX. And me and Seba, we have experience with Yoroi, so we are always thinking about how we can improve the UX. And the idea is that for the final users, if they're executing a smart contract in the sidechain, that maybe they don't even notice that's in the sidechain, and it works so fast that yes, seamlessly. So that's a little bit more context of about the consensus protocol that we're going to be using in the very beginning.
What is the block times that you're planning?
2 seconds.
Cool.
Yeah, if I can add something to finality as well, one of the key metrics for a lot of blockchains is how fast people have to wait for transactions to be finalized. Now, for Cardano, the more the stake is distributed, the faster the finality is, in a sense. So I like to take this opportunity to remind everybody, if you're delegating to somebody who operates multiple stake pools, you're increasing the time it takes for a transaction to be finalized in a mathematical sense on the Cardano blockchain. So best to find a small pool operator to support.
So
Thank
will
you,
your
Sebastian. That's a very good point. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good to know.
will your bridge be ready for when this first stage of Plutus?
So we're hoping to ship the first version by the end of the year. So that's our current target. So it's not going to be available September 12th, and we wouldn't have the tooling to do this on September 12th anyways. As I mentioned, the September 12th release of Plutus on the mainnet is more of a hard fork event, not so much a tooling release date. But we are actively, working on the integration of everything to try and get this out the door by the end of the year.
When you say out the door, you mean production? I'm assuming. Do you plan on having
exactly.
your own? Do you plan on having your own test nets before then, so that we could send up one of your servers?
Yeah, we plan to have a test net, and also, as you may know, our company is also working on a wallet that will support both Cardano dApps and also our sidechain natively. So we hope that our wallet, which is called Flint Wallet, it's not out yet, but we plan to release it sometime in September. And this wallet will essentially support, both Plutus smart contracts and Solidity smart contracts and anything else that uses our sidechain in the future. So we think this is going to be, key to having users be able to easily access, the whole developer ecosystem.
I have a question. So you guys are working on this project, and you said there's not going to be a token for this side chain. So how do you monetize it? How do you guys get paid for running this whole other chain?
Yeah, so I can answer that as well. So we got some initial money from some known entities. For example, we got some money from IOHK, got some money from Emergo to fund the initial development. So we do have some investors inside Milkomeda. So Milkomeda is a registered company in the US. So we do have an actual registered company with actual stock for people that want to support the construction of our protocol. So like IOHK and Emergo. Now, how the company itself makes money, as I mentioned, there is a DAO for the system. and we will help with the validation. And as part of participating in the DAO, there are rewards. For example, the fees on the sidechain, along with some other ideas we have for monetization, monetizing the act of participating in the sidechain, because that's required. Otherwise, nobody would run our sidechain. But we also do have 4 catalyst proposals for Fund 6. So we took a lot of the different components of the Milkomeda protocol, and we split them up into 4 catalyst proposals. So if you want to support us financially to make sure that we can do this, definitely take a look at our catalyst proposals.
Oh, so just so I understand, what you're saying is you've got some initial funding, there's request for more funding to finish the development, but once the sidechain is live, it will be funded by the transaction fees. I'm guessing those are going to be in Cardano or ADA, sorry.
Yeah, so transaction fees will be in ADA, both for MENA and sidechain as well. So sidechain runs entirely on ADA, so fees paid on the sidechain will also be in ADA. But the DAO will also pay the validators who are running this sidechain. And we have a few ideas for this. I don't think we've added to the documentation yet. But we plan to kind of add more information about this sooner than later.
Oh, thank you. That's good to know. Anyone else have questions for Sebastian? Patrick, you unmuted yourself, so I'm
No
waiting for you to
questions.
speak.
I was thinking we should go like maybe anti-technical for just a little bit, just to like even it out. That was awesome. Like super informative, but
Yeah,
very
no, it's good.
technical.
I think it's going
Very
to take a
technical. It's
lot of,
great.
yeah, I think it's going to take a lot of learning for those who are
Exactly.
not technically able to understand a bit more of this. But I think the summaries and the high level stuff were good. So what we can take away from it is that in terms of how it's designed, it's very different, but the functionality would just be so much better. And for me, that's what I understood when I first got in, and I think that's still the case. And that's why I'm happy, even if it takes a bit longer to do X, Y, or Z. I'd much rather it's built properly and it works than rush it out and nobody uses it because there's a bit of a flaw in it or it's not so attractive. I mean, how many chains have we seen with smart contracts and they just die after they launch? So,
Well, and the other thing that I think that's important, if you just like step for just up a second, that's not technical, is something that we've been talking about a lot with Untigs and just the NFT space in general. Is there's a lot of commonality across chain, right? Like it's going to be a multi-chain future, whether we like it or not, whether we feel we like ETH or Solana or whatever it may be. So this idea that we can sort of start bridging a little bit and start finding the people that are across different chains that have a similar ethos or a similar passion or a similar sort of outlook. I like that we can start bridging that a little bit. Like, I think that'll be a really important piece to hopefully start getting away from this tribalism a bit, because there's a lot of great people on all of these. I'm glad that Cardano can help start connecting those. I think that's an important piece that we can kind of hopefully bring forward.
yeah, I think talking of tribalism and passion, the NFT space in Cardano has blown up. And I think we've seen some crazy movements in the last epoch, actually. I mean, over 5 days, the whole space has changed. And it'd be interesting to find out what people's thoughts are on that and where they see the space going just in its current state. Because CNFT.io has been going down because I'm assuming there's a few people trying to play the system and they're just stupid amounts of volume. So there's good news and bad news, I guess.
Who wants to take that?
I think Jack has said he would do me an NFT update. That's what he promised me. So he's been watching the markets and he said he'll do me a price action movement on NFTs.
Yeah, so hi guys. Yeah, it's been on fire recently. Maybe something to do with Visa buying some crypto punkers brought a lot more credibility or legitimacy to the situation. So there was one very recent that was mentioned earlier with Cardano trees, and the difference behind this one is the actual code is written in onto the blockchain, so there's no access point outside of it, so it could go down, is my understanding. I asked Damien for more details, and he said he's gonna bring out more information over time to explain that. But effectively, it's a new project. It's come out. For every tree that you buy, they're gonna plant a tree globally. It doesn't actually specify whether they're gonna put that tree in that country, so Peru, Mexico, where it may be. But it's from some community that's some people who have been in the community for a long time. From a price action point of view, they started at about 20 ADA, 15 ADA, and then they had 4 levels up. I think the highest price point they were selling at on the primary market was about 40 ADA, and they're currently selling for about 300 ADA each. So it's gone up very rapidly on that side of things. Has anyone else been looking at this?
Well, the big thing, like at least from the unzig side, is just people frustrated whether they buy something, right? Because it keeps getting canceled on the CNFT site, right? And I think there's been a lot of, because people can't keep up with the price change. I mean, it was 4 hours and it went up like 30%. It's just impossible.
Yeah, I saw that. I went to sleep. I saw the price on the floor was about 1,000 ADA, and then I walked back up. I looked at it, and it was a $1,300 floor. Sorry, 1,300 ADA floor. It's moving really quickly. Um, it's expanding fast, and I'm not used to seeing that kind of movement. I mean, I personally have not bought art previously. Now I've stepped into the NFT world, and I find myself buying different pieces that I'm interested in. But the prices moves are quite substantial. I'm not sure if this could be sustained.
It's an interesting point to leave that very quickly while we go to Bullish Dumpling, because she will have our China update, and I don't want to forget that. So, Dumpling, are you there?
Hi, thank you, Guru. I'm here. Of course, I'm here. I'll always be here.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. It's good to hear from you. Please fire away.
Great discussion with Sebastian. Sebastian actually joined my Cardano China Telegram group, and he's been answering some curious questions from my audience. So it's wonderful and a nice pivot for my today's update. Hi, everyone. I am Dumpling. I bring you regular Epochly China update. So today I give you 3 pieces of fun, interesting news regarding the community that I'm building. So first of all, last epoch when we spoke, my Chinese Telegram group for Cardano had 440 people. As we're speaking today, we have over 500 members in the group. So the community is steadily growing. Now I'm finding it a bit difficult to cope with so many members and so many messages every day. So I will look into hiring an assistant to help me manage the group with me. I'm also thinking about opening new dedicated channels for dedicated topics, such as NFT channels. Last week, I spoke with Jeremy from the Cardano Foundation about growing the Chinese-speaking community. He mentioned that there is a big Taiwanese Cardano group. So the next step for me in terms of community building is to connect with those people from those groups and to bring them together. And on to the next topic. Definitely the latest and the hottest topic also in the Chinese community is, no surprise, CNFTs. The hottest ones under discussion recently are Coco Loco, Cardano Trees, Crypto Dino, and ON6. People are absolutely hyped about those NFTs. And I know some Chinese people were staying up all night trying to buy Coco Locos. Now, regarding the NFTs, I had an interview with Alex from ON6. I have uploaded the video, and I'll be sharing the link on Twitter shortly. So feel free to watch it and share it. It's a solid 1-hour interview full of knowledge and inspiration from Alex, how ON6 were created, what the next series will be about, and the hidden perks for holding ON6. So I uploaded to my English channel and named the channel Spicy Dumpling Show. So please watch the video and let me know. I'll try to do more interviews with interesting people in the community in the future. That's all from me today. Very excited for the mainnet launch. Very excited for Sebastian's new project and for all the hot CNFTs out there. Thanks all for listening, and I look forward to hearing today's NFT discussion.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Dumpling. Just a few other questions. How's your stake pool doing?
You ask this every epoch. I feel so heartwarmed. It is 4 million ADA and still steadily remaining at 4.2 million ADA, as if somebody is trying to keep this at 420. I'm sure it's probably something to do with 420.
There are suspects out there. Just a bit, if anybody's curious, the ticker is FICA, F-I-K-A. Am I correct?
Absolutely, FIKA, FICA. Thank you, Guru.
Oh, awesome. And actually, another thing, you did an interview recently with our young Benjay, and I think that's available now as a podcast.
Yes, it's available as podcast. You can check that on Benjay's Twitter and on my Twitter as well. Benjay and I talked a little bit about SPO operations, and he's interested in building a community as well. So we talked a bit about how to build strong communities. So feel free to check Benjay out. Thanks for mentioning that, Guru.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Because I did an interview with Benjay back in the day, and he's a really nice guy. First, I don't want to go on about this too often, but he's only 18, and for somebody of his age to have the sort of calmness, intellectual bandwidth to discuss these things is amazing. So I've always been very impressed by him. So give him a bit of support. If you see him on Twitter, follow him, please. That'd be a nice way to support people who want to come into the space. So should we go back to our NFT discussion? Because I think my Twitter poll has said everybody's crazy about NFTs. If anybody wants to speak about NFTs, now's the time.
Jim, one busy. Oh, go ahead, Benny.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, going back to the unsigs, I am finding myself wondering, like, is it going to keep going up, or is it just a bubble that's going to burst, or is it going to become the next kind of, I don't know, maybe the next of the kind of punks kind of level in the future, or what's going to happen?
But Space Buds has been doing crazy stuff, right? I mean, that's what's really been nuts.
Yeah, I mean, all these things. I mean, but I mean, I've been looking at unsigs just because, I mean, those are the ones I like, and I've got a few. And it's insane looking at I'd say that the floor is doubling every 2 days. Oh, I mean, it's nuts.
Something that someone pointed out that's important, right? There's 31,000 whatever 119, but there's only 500 or less for actual sale, right? So I think part of it also, like, that's for those in particular. I can't speak to Space, but I don't know that as much about it. But other than the crazy prices that have been going on, part of it is right. So for those who aren't aware, right, part of holding an unsig is also Alex's or Modad, the guy, the creator of unsigs. He's Project 2, right? If you have an unsig, that gives you sort of access to that, right? Sort of this token to it. So there's this combination of, there's a lot of folks who I think bought it sort of thinking it's unique, that it had a different, being on chain and being the code and being something you can regenerate. And I think from just being in this ecosystem a lot, there's a lot of folks who planned on holding it for a year just from day one. So there's a lot of people that, for at least funds in particular, that they're just waiting, and so with 500 only, that says a lot. So I think that's part of it. I also think it's just people get noticing, right? People are coming to this space, and I think it's a good thing. So
yeah, I think with NFTs, remember, it's a super hypercharged micro market in a crazy niche, right? You've got crypto, then you've got a particular chain, then you've got NFT, then you've got a type of NFT. And within that market, you've still got people looking at different rarities. And if those, 5 or 6 people don't sell, then there is no price for that, right? So I think NFTs are a very interesting market to watch purely because it's like a super niche micro market. And the closest thing I can imagine to that is like fine art, where you have limited collections. Therefore, the price is very much in the background. It takes ages for something to come back onto the market, and when it does, you have to snap it up, otherwise it's gone. And we are going to start seeing that quality of NFT. Whether we have that now or not, that's still up for debate, I think. But
we were talking about this in the Unsig Discord, around some folks saying, hey, after just 2 days they're priced out, and we had this sort of moment saying, well, okay, well, as smart contracts come out and as new ways to invest in the Cardano ecosystem, whether it's indexes or DeFi or whatever, these new assets or dApps, or how people will make their ADA in the future, one of the things that will happen, just like the current quote unquote real fine arts market, is once you get the ability to buy it, that's one of the things you do with that income, right? With that new ADA you have, you come back and you say, hey, I couldn't afford it then, but I made a bunch of ADA investing in ABCD thing, and then art is one of those things you spend it on. And I think it'll kind of mirror that, which is exciting post smart contracts, because there's going to be a lot more diversity of investments, and I think that's really important, and they're all feed on each other, which is pretty exciting.
Patrick, please add or correct me if I'm wrong, because I do want to try to answer Vanity's question. He asked about, will Unsig be the next
CryptoPunk, or one of the hottest existing projects. And I want to say, to my understanding, it's on a very different level, because through my interview chat with Alex, it's very different from what we have now. It sounds like on six, those pieces themselves, they are created by codes, so you could recreate your ONSIG on your own machine. So it's not a JPEG uploaded to IPFS. Instead, the code itself is the ONSIG's art. So in that sense, I think we are really taking the NFT art well beyond the current definition. So on that level, I don't think that we can compare that with CryptoPunk and those current existing JPEG pixel arts. So I think it has even greater potential. That could potentially that probably explains why the price floor is constantly and rapidly growing, because even for an outsider, non-technical person like me, it sounds like a paradigm shifting piece of art.
Yeah, I mean,
Go for it, Vandy.
I used CryptoPunks just as a price kind of thing, not as a direct comparison in art. In terms of the art, they're closer to art blocks than Ethereum. And just recently, in the past month, I mean, literally this month, there's suddenly been like $250 million trade volume on Ethereum in basically their version of UNSIGs, which, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand it correctly, theirs are also generated on chain in the same kind of way that UNSIGs are. And that's where the movement seems to be going now. It seems to be going towards these kind of more generated artistic projects. And the fact that UNSIGs is getting big on Cardano, it's not just a bubble in Cardano, it's a movement within the overall NFT community. And if that is indeed how things are going, obviously we are going to see UNSIGs going up and up and up and up and up. So it'd be really interesting to see if that grows. In fact, there's an article on Decrypt, and I think I retweeted it. I can't remember. If not, I can tweet it and you can have a look.
Yeah, I think if you tweet it now while you're a speaker, we all get to see it.
Okay,
You
cool.
can do that when you finish talking. That's fine. I don't want you to try to get you to do too many things at once.
That's all right. I got it from my phone somewhere. I'm sure I can bring it up.
Perry, did you have something to add to this? Because I was gonna add to it, but I knew you had your hand up. So
yeah, no, and so yeah, I've been talking about this with Jagger and some of the others here in the space, in the past days. But yeah, I do think the comparison generatively between unsigs and like art blocks and Fidenza is a bit more appropriate. And I just want people to keep in mind, unsig holders, congrats, keep holding. I do expect they'll be very prized in time, but just keep in mind the floors and the prices that are being paid can swing very rapidly in the other direction as well.
Exactly.
And so and so that's not a swipe at the project, and that's not to mean that it won't be valuable down the line, but just keep in mind there will be explosions up, and then there can be implosions downward along the way. But I do think it is not unreasonable to say or draw the parallel between the activity we've seen on Ethereum and with art blocks and Fidenzas, that unsigs could be considered very, very prized and very, very valuable down the line. In part because, the holders are so darn diamond handed. I mean, I'm keeping a laser eye on this activity, and there's so limited of inventory, and the floor keeps moving up at such a rapid pace. I think there will be a snapback or a pullback at some point, but ultimately, long term, down the line, this is kind of a piece of Cardano history that you're buying. Any of these pre-smart contract projects, but some will be valued more highly than others. But the unsigs, especially, I think, will be very valuable down the line.
Hey, guys.
Jim, jump in.
Okay. Long time listener, guys. First time speaker. This is wonderful. I got into the Unsig project from the very beginning. I actually came across Patrick and Alex looking for a marketplace for ADA.
Different
NFTs.
Patrick, by the way. Different Patrick.
Yeah. Patrick, the creator of NFTmaker.io. But yeah, so I believe that it's going to continue to rise because of the 68 lines of Python code that was created to mint over 5 million unsigs that was then reduced
50
million. Yeah. And then reduced down to 31,119. and it's just a really awesome project that is built on the chain itself and not just a pretty picture on an IPFS server. But what I really wanted to talk about was that Unsigs kind of unleashed this explosion of side projects that I believe have been wonderful. I mean, the transformation of an Unzig into something, another piece of artwork, or taking a purist and Unzig and placing it somewhere in the world, like on a building or next to another piece of art. I think just that sort of genre that's come out of this project has been wonderful, and I think it will just continue to increase the value of the Unsigs as time goes on.
I totally agree, and I want to obviously I agree. I have a freaking unsig profile at the moment, right? So, but I do want to back up sort of to the point. I want to say a couple things about sort of NFTs in general and punks and sort of this general direction we're talking about, right? So, I do want to sort of recognize that the sort of the deed version, right, of NFTs, of there's a JPEG and you have this link to it and you're buying this kind of deed. I own the sort of property or the rights to say I own it, is still like a really critical and crazily important evolution in art and or this idea of like ownership or visibility, right? So like whether it's punks in Ethereum or whether it's Space Buds or whether it's just the NFT that has this link, that is really valuable. We shouldn't sort of diminish it in any way. But at the same time, I think what we're talking about too is it's kind of like fighting the last war, which is not a bad thing at all. I just mean part of what's exciting, which is not Cardano specific, is what does art and creating visual sort of things that people like, what does that look like when you have a blockchain? What does that look like when you can put code and regenerate it? What does it look like when you have smart contracts and you have, like I said before, programmable art? We've never had programmable art in this sense before, ever, right? And this idea of whether it's Fidenza, whether it's art blocks, whether it's Unsigs, whether it's Cardano trees, that is like, it is, we are at the very, I tweeted something earlier, we are 1% into programmable art. And people like to connect on entertainment. People like to share, and I think we're exposing the amount. I mean, how much creativity is coming out in NFTs is awesome, right? In my background, I studied art history. I understand sort of the amazing things that have happened over generations, which is why I liked and loved Unsigs. But I think the most important part, and the reason that this account is called the Unsigned, is we're giving people who are just as creative as some of the quote unquote most creative artists in the world a platform to expose their great ideas, right? Whether that's an unsig, whether it's a tree. And the idea of what these are doing, and then you start adding programmability to it, like that's, in my opinion, way better than programmable money, right? Because that's much more emotional and much more like what people are buying it for. And I think that's the exciting part of what's going to be in front of us. And I think this is the very beginning of it, which is why, to the original point, but punks were just as important in the ecosystem, and Beeple was just as important, and all these other things. And it's great that we're finally getting a new sort of channel to express ourselves. And it's weird because it's all converging on this blockchain thing. And that's really fascinating. And we have no idea what's going to happen next. And that is exciting.
And just to plug my recent NFT purchase, I don't know if anybody noticed, but Anton, God, what's his surname? I keep forgetting. And did anybody catch the Anton Goodin? Is it Goodin? His NFT drop?
I don't
No,
know, but to answer your question from our Discord, yes, I'll take it. But
that's yours. But basically, he has released a number of pieces on Ethereum, and I think he's starting to release stuff on Cardano. And I wonder if that's the beginning of a big shift. For creators, the cost of creation on Ethereum is very high. That's why you don't see the equivalent of like a big drop like Unsig on Ethereum, right? Because just the gas fees alone on 31,000
mm-hmm.
NFTs would make you bankrupt
Well, and
as a
this
project.
goes back. And this goes back to, so I am going to go kind of now Cardano shill, is what's exciting about smart contracts is all the things that have been possible on Ethereum are now way more accessible, way cheaper, and way better to do. And I think one of the things that I hope the unsigned kind of group can do, and I would love any and all of your help to do it, is bridge this gap between, ETH versus Cardano, because Cardano will win. Like that I know. But what we should do is bridge the sort of human to human gap and say, hey, like let's share some things, let's connect with them, like as Sebastian was talking about earlier. That's a tool to bridge a gap. And then all of a sudden, once they see it and they talk to us and they see how cheap it is and the projects that can be done that can't be done on Ethereum, well, that's the next wave of people, because they're going to bring their friends along with them, right? So if we're welcoming them, we're actually bringing them in and showing them what to do and giving them, like, the technicals will matter, but we have to talk to them and we have to connect with them. And I think we can do that, and then they'll see it. Like, you can't do 30,000 drops on Ethereum. It'll cost you, a lifetime's worth of money. But here you can do it, and that's awesome.
Another
Yeah,
thing as well, I think that would, sorry to interrupt. Another thing I think that would connect people is if the this speculation about OpenSea adding Cardano is true, and it is I know it's only speculation, but you remember OpenSea have officially announced they are adding more blockchains, and Cardano is a logical addition. If that actually happens, you're going to get all these Cardano NFT collectors, Ethereum NFT collectors suddenly have the Cardano NFT scene in front of them automatically. And they're going to look at all this stuff. They're going to look at Unsigs and look at Buds. They're going to look at everything we've got. And, it's going to connect the two. It won't be separate anymore. It'll just be an NFT community, regardless of, it'll be kind of blockchain agnostic, because, I think most of the people who collect NFTs are in it for the art rather than, being a maxi for a certain blockchain. So I think that would be a really good way to connect people as well. And obviously, of course, on the financial side, the prices will skyrocket. But I mean, in terms of the art and in terms of the people, it'll connect everyone. I think that'd be an awesome thing to see happen, and I really hope it does.
Anybody that's forming a community around something fun or enjoyable or emotional, whether that's a JPEG link or a generative art on chain, that's all good, right? That's good for humans. That's good for everybody. So as long as you're doing it earnestly and you're trying to kind of make something that you hope people will enjoy, let's encourage that. Because one of the things that I've seen and I've tried to sort of respond to is this, unsigs are better than X space buds, whatever. It's like, no, it's an and, right? It's both. It's awesome. Like, space buds are fantastic. People making things that other people enjoy, the more we can encourage that, the better, right? Whether it's sort of technically more interesting or, whatever, that is good. Like, and I do think there's something good about that, and that speaks to me. But if it speaks to somebody that they've got a, a fishbowl head guy with roses and guns, and it's great, awesome, let them do it. And I hope that makes people money. I hope it connects with good humans. Like, art, that's what art's all about. And that's the art market in the traditional sense is very inaccessible. And this is what it looks like when the art market's accessible. And that's really what we're doing. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's the really big innovation as far as I was actually saying this the other night to someone. I was saying the traditional art market, you have to be rich to get into it in the first place. Whereas this,
yep,
you don't. You can be early on a project that becomes, and you can be, and just collect these artworks.
Because the traditional world starts as a status symbol, and here it starts as an interest. And when you start as an interest, that is a very different beginning, and that's exciting.
Exactly, and that is a very different dynamic, and that is, I think, one of the most exciting things about NFTs to me. It changes the art world completely. It changes the way you think about art, doesn't it?
And then you add programmability to it. All these things, right? I mean, like, someone's going to be clever enough to take like a traditional quote unquote, IPFS thing and make something interesting with smart contracts on it. That's going to be cool. So all of a sudden, you don't know, right? Space buds may become more technically interesting than unsigs in 2 years. Who knows?
I think that's exactly what I think is the opening that a lot of people are seeing that haven't been, art interested as much. Happy Epochs End, everybody. And I really wanted to chime in on what you said earlier with the developers. What do you think 10 years ago developers had to do with people that were making art hey, can you make me a website for my gallery? Like that's developers and artists working together in many areas. These days, an artist can say, hey, here's the art I have. Can you make this interactive? Can you make this dynamic? Can you make it animated? We have a lot of content creators that can be doing that. And that's one side. That's like you come from the artistic side and you bring things in that require developing. And then there is the other side, developers who are interested in art, but they can't really, they're not artistically inclined, as in, I'm not great at painting or whatever, but I can do algorithms and I can understand what makes this art into some generative, format. And so those people and the intersection of these two, I think, hasn't existed, until 5 years ago. And so I think that's where a lot of
Yes.
explosion is coming from. These two groups of people, creative minds, come together.
I want to just like 1000% just love what you just said for this reason, which is the algorithm, right? Like this idea that generative art's just some like random thing you put in a little bit of code and voila, you've got unsigs, right? Or whatever, pick your generative art. Like that's not true, right? This idea that you would have to pick your language and pick your quote unquote tools, your paintbrushes, your colors, like when you're doing your algorithms or your math or you're going through those, as Jim said before, there was 50 million unsigs and there's only 31,119 after that. Well, that's an act of curation, right? Of deciding what's good and what's bad and thinking about the colors and the parameters and all the different aspects. And that's no different than an artist picking a paint type, a medium, and getting really like expertly, I'm a craftsman in creating generative art. That's just as good of a skill as someone who can do oil painting. And great. Yeah. that's it's to your point, making accessible creative art to what has not been accessible before, and that's phenomenal.
Imagine in 5 years from now when somebody says, "What? You drew this in PHP and not in Python? That's amazing."
Exactly. You can participate with it. Like that's like there's a whole new world of just stuff we just have no idea is going to happen. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think I would just add to that in the sense that as a crypto community or people who believe in, peer-to-peer and self-governance and so on, having a method, a platform, medium for us to express our culture and our identity is amazingly powerful for the space. And like if you look at Bitcoin, they can't really participate in culture in that sense, while Ethereum could, and you help them grow as a community. And I think Cardano now has the opportunity to, really express our culture through NFTs that we create.
And what a beautiful point, right? Because what's the point of this art, right? Is to connect each other. But what are we doing this for? Right? Why are we all sitting on this Twitter space? Because we're connecting with each other, and that this NFT can do it. And what a great counter to the sort of I'll call it sterileness of Bitcoin. And I hold some Bitcoin. I think it's a great use of thing, but it's not cultural, right? In that sense, and what a wonderful point. So I know a few people have joined in. So who requested that wants to say something?
We've not heard from C. Blair. They've been a speaker for a while. And also, if you don't want to speak, there are people requesting. So if you could drop off, then I can let others on if you're finished speaking.
Hi, guys. My name's Clay. I've been a long time listener. The reason I was kind of waiting is y'all switched over to NFTs. And my question was to Sebastian about sidechains and what kind of hardware requirements, if somebody wanted to start a bare metal stake pool, what kind of hardware requirements are going to be necessary to run these sidechains? And I'll go ahead and hang up there.
Yeah, I don't think it would be too different than the hardware requirement to run Cardano. Keep in mind, this is a sidechain, not a connection to the Ethereum mainnet. So a sidechain starts with no history, right? It's just the empty blockchain to start. Obviously, over time, that sidechain will grow in size, and the requirements to participate in the sidechain will grow with that. But at the start, this will be a fairly lightweight, system, and because Cardano also is lightweight, you should not require particularly beefy hardware to run this.
Thank you for that.
Awesome. I'm glad you got to ask that, Clay. That's a good question, actually. Anyone else want to speak?
Cinnamon.
Hello, everybody. Happy Epochs
The
End.
unsynced takeover of Epochs End. Welcome.
No. I actually want to switch topics, but Sebastian, Nico, thank you very much for joining us. Happy Epochs End, everybody. Good to see so many familiar faces. NFTs. So yesterday, Coco Locos. Do we want to discuss?
It's a sore topic. I'm opinionated. I'm opinionated about it, but I'm going to step out of this one because somebody asked me if they should buy it, and I just said it's associated with things that are very unsavory, and therefore I'm staying away from it. But please go ahead.
I just think for all the reasons that, we're in on this call, why we're listening to very intelligent project managers, run this project. We're all in here to help each other, to nurture our ecosystem, and to ultimately change the world for the better. That was the first instance in my, relatively short 6 months of the Cardano community where I had to take a step back and really kind of assess, this head of influence, whatever you want to call that, in the Cardano community, kind of take it down the specific road. And we've had certain discussions in the CNFT space with, the Mirror project, the inherent rights behind CNFTs, the art, etc. But this is the first time where I kind of felt that a lot of people getting into the CNFT space for the first time had a really, really rough time. And for me, the thing that was so appealing about Cardano is that it is so easy to get on any space and to ask a question and to be pointed in the right direction and be helped by like 3 different people knowledgeable about what you're going through, whether it's setting up a staking wallet, setting up a cold wallet. I have never run into a situation where I've really been stuck for more than an hour or two, which is really kind of special.
It's awesome.
And it's something that made me really tap in and want to give back to this community as much as possible. Whenever I find myself in a situation, I can do the same or point somebody in the right direction, I do that. And so I just wanted to touch on, we've all been discussing the things that we can positively do to change. And not that this is like a negative thing, but I think that our community deserves scrutiny. And I think that, we have a kind of a diligence and the kind of thing that kicked this whole thing off was Bullish saying that, a lot of Chinese people were interested, and Bullish chime in if I'm going off the rails or whatever. But it kind of stung that potential new CNFT users just had a rough experience and didn't really know how to navigate that.
Well, there's 2 things, and then actually, lead time. You raise your hand. Go for it.
So I just wanted to chime in on the Coco Loco thing. So I barely know anything about it, so I feel like I'm definitely qualified to speak my mind on it. I think it's important to consider the fact that Coco Loco was probably just big enough to fail. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of CNFT projects that are put out that are thoroughly done and have captures in place and all of these things to make it secure, but most do not. Coco Loco was simply big enough to be a viable target for people to orchestrate, not really a bot attack, but let's say, like an exploit of it that brought this down. So they're not like uniquely screwed things up, but it's very obvious because it was so big that it turned into a spectacle. And if you put your ass in spanking height, you're going to have red cheeks. And that's what we saw. And I do think that they deserve a more than one lifted index finger for rushing things out too quickly. And this is what happens when you do that. That is definitely against the ethos of Cardano. having said that, I think Cinnamon raises an excellent point, which is, and such a lovely one that is, that we're seeing just what kind of community Cardano is, what we're made of. Because when you screw the pooch, or if you're stand left in the wind, not really sure what to do, you can be sure to have multiple people willing to gladly help you here in Cardano. So there's a lot of silver linings that's come out of this disaster, but I do think that they deserve, a little bit of public shaming. But we are Cardano, so we're still going to help them get back on their feet.
That last point you just said is the most important piece, right? So whether you like Coco Locos or not, this idea, and if you saw Patrick Tobler's kind of response of feeling very sort of personally responsible a little bit as NFT maker and doing that, I think that's part of it, right? Like his earnestness to want to help whoever it is that's using his platform to do it. But I think the other important point is, sure, like, it wasn't great, but the response isn't to go shit on Coco Loco. It's go say, hey, listen, guys, like maybe if someone has an idea to help them, go help them. Go say, hey, listen, if you want to do this, or reach out to them, that's a much better response. And I do think too, right, sort of to Cinnamon's point, while it is unfortunate that may be someone's first experience, just like the sort of other the rest of the world, that's on Coco Loco, not Cardano, right? And so the Cardano response to Lead Time's point is, what do we do to them? We say, hey, listen, man, that sucks. But, if you want some help, or you want some with the next drop, or whatever it may be, I'm sure someone in this community can actually say, hey, listen, I would have done it this way. They'll learn from it. That's a much more important response and than saying, man, what a crap project, right? And you don't have to buy it. Nobody has to buy it. Like, this whole thing's around doing your research or do it yourself. But I'd rather reach out to them and help them. Like, that's the most important piece that we can do.
Yeah, I think if you were doing something new or innovative, or you were a genuine artist and you had a problem, I think we could be quite forgiving. Again, like I don't, I'm just going to say what I think here, right? I think it was a low level, low quality money grab that went wrong, and that's why they don't have much sympathy from me. But I could be wrong. Maybe there are amazing artists I just don't know about.
Well, but this gets into this like interesting point that happened in the traditional, what is quote unquote art, what is worthwhile, what is good enough, and I think like I'm not really sure that's for us to decide. I think that's for the market to decide in the sense, and Coco Loco and the folks behind it probably doing something the second time. I would be a little skeptical, right? But as far as the people making it and what they do, reaching out to them to say, man, that's and it's fine that we're criticizing it. Totally should. But I don't think the response is to really like put him down. I think it's just say, well, let's do something to help him out.
I want to bring the focus kind of back to the first time users, because they're it's on them, it's on the project. They could have handled it better, but I mean, Big Pay's in here. Mycelial Gallery rolled out great. There's a thriving community. There's lots of help there. And to me, that just kind of curated along the same guidelines that Cardano follows. Like tastes in art is different, but then we have like these first time users who are trying to jump into the space, and it's just like 2 days of like having no idea where your ADA is. This website is shutting down, and it was just like threads after threads of these people who had no idea what to do. And I mean, I just kind of want to focus on that part, because there's it's easy to say we forgot a capture or this and that, but I mean, when we're building this ecosystem, that first touch is so important, especially for things like art and things that are supposed to be kind of whimsical. And for those of us who aren't as technically savvy, we can be a part of the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of humans. And that should just be a lot better than the experience that I think quite a few people had yesterday.
So we are 100% agree. But I think the response, if I'm asking anybody in the Cardano community to respond to it, is to make a service or a tool or something that helps the next person who wants to launch something, because how many artists don't have the right technical skills to sort of launch, right? And you're going to go find some developer and they're going to say, hey, I got this, and this is nothing about Coco Loco, but the response from the Cardano community is make better tooling, right? Make better applications, make something like NFT Maker, or make something that can help launch a project that is going to get a ton of attention. So like the response is tooling and then helping, because I think something that I do, my job sort of on a day-to-day basis is an enterprise technology, people serving global markets, which is what we're talking about. And I do think there's sometimes there's a lack of appreciation for a big giant company and what they do to prepare for scale. And I think one of the things about that launch was it wasn't sufficiently prepared enough for the sort of the idea of what it could be, and why that is doesn't matter. But we have a lot of folks building like enterprise. We're asking folks who may or may never built enterprise grade or scaled technology to hopefully do it. But and I don't know their intentions and if it's a money grab or not. But it's hard to build something that 50,000 people are going to go jump into. Well, I don't know this number, but a lot of people are going to jump into. That's not exactly like everybody's done that before.
There's truth in what you're saying, Unsigned. I just want to ensure that my two Lovelaces get staked accurately here. There's a lot of subjectivity to this, of course, but ultimately the things that went wrong were very obvious blunders. My personal individual response to this is to the people involved with the Coco Loco is shame on you. This is a disaster. Let me know if I can help.
Because that last point is the best part. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Let me know if I can help. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do want to help, but holy shit, they really fucked up. Like, this is not, oh, this could happen to anyone. This was pure negligence. It was entirely on them because this was an obvious thing to prepare for. And the influencers involved with this have a massive following. They should have expected a flood of ugly
That's true.
I'm
That's
absolutely.
true. That's true. No,
Sorry, if I might jump in, it's a happy Epochs End, everybody, by the way. And I think I'm quite with lead time here because it's a huge fuck up, to be honest. If you went to their Discord, they opened the Discord unmoderated. Everyone had every rights. Everyone could add everyone, They didn't set up anything. And that's why it has a bad taste, even for me. I'm not too long in this space. I got into NFTs 3 or 4 months ago. I hold some unsigs now. I'm pretty happy about the new floor, by the way. But it's crazy, You went to that Discord and there were no help, no moderation, no how-to channels. Nothing was prepared, and that gives it a bad taste, in my opinion. That's why.
Totally agree. And again, I think we are not disagreeing on anything in that sense. But what I mean is that's not on Cardano, right? That's on them.
Absolutely.
And then the next person who's got this hopefully learns from them. And then more importantly, I do think there's an opportunity to look at this and say, hey, maybe we can help the next person. Maybe it's not them. That's okay. But we do. If we hope a billion people use this, well, this is going to get worse. There's going to be way more people that are doing bad, terrible things, right? Like, so how do we prevent it? Is you make sort of to the original point of when someone says, "How do I do this?" If you can point them to the right tooling or the right person or the right group, well, if you make the product, you say, "Hey, if you want to launch something, go work with XYZ company," and that's really how we solve it in long term.
That's absolutely true.
I agree with him completely. I don't think we should conflate, high YouTube numbers and high viewership with, being able to handle the sheer numbers that he had on launch.
Yeah, there's no like that's a skill set you'd hope they have, but there's no reason to believe they thought it the same way. And that's the enterprise technology side of like, unless you've just thought about it and had to live it, this happens all the time in sort of the real quote unquote large enterprise world. And so if you've lived it, you would be much more, wary of this.
See, we saw Crypt Kitties, when we saw that happen to them, and then, we didn't do a big hype session before because we were worried about the servers because this was the first time we were doing it. We were being meticulous in the way that we were building the project, but this was a worry for us. So I don't think we should just immediately think what he was doing was malicious.
I know Crypto Drip has been trying to, and Patrick Tobler, who I think would be an awesome person to add to this, would be great. But if you're not speaking, maybe bow out for just a minute. But if you got something to say, go for it.
Maybe I missed it, but I haven't heard anybody really attribute any form of maliciousness to their intent. I certainly don't believe that. I do attribute them with an assumption of lethargy or laziness. I do think that a lot of these things could have easily been predicted and prepared for with minimal efforts, looking into any other kind of projects being set up like this or involving any kind of people with experience.
Regarding poorly
You
managed
stated that. Sorry.
Okay, so regarding poorly managed projects, be it NFT or any other projects, and speculating people who will get burned, those things will come to Cardano, and we need to establish the understanding that we are going to have a huge ecosystem. Good projects, bad projects, they're going to come. There's no stopping or trying to kill each individual one of them. So the key really, I believe, is in education. We need to educate people about how to deal with those things, how to spot good projects, how to differentiate good projects from bad projects. And in the end, if people took the lesson and they still make their decisions, then we have done what we can. But we're never going to have a 100% cleansed, perfectly clean ecosystem. That's my point.
That's true, and I'm with you there. And I think the most important thing is that we as a community have to show that we actually can support other projects. But I see Patrick is a listener. Maybe he wants to talk because he knows the technical side of these things. That's why I'm going to make a space for him.
Thank you so much. And Sergio, you've had your hand up. Why don't you speak first? And I don't know if Xiaomek is the right way to pronounce it, but thank you for making space for Patrick.
Hey, thanks everybody. I just have one little thing to add. One thing that really reminds me of is, do you guys remember when Gary Vee had his drop with Ethereum? How he spent weeks kind of educating his crowd base about how to set up a wallet, what to do, and all that stuff. I just think that influencers and people like that, they might benefit from doing that to their community ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
That's all I'd add.
And that's a good point though too, of like taking your responsibility seriously. This is a sort of global problem of all leaders at the moment, right? I mean, if we look out to the outside world and what we hope we're changing, and so I think to that point of calling them out is 100% a good thing to do. But folks who should take that responsibility seriously, if you have that YouTube channel, you have that sort of influence, you got to do it. Crypto Drip.
Hey, happy Epochs End, everybody.
Sorry it took so long for you to get on, man. I apologize.
No, actually, patience is a virtue, right? I actually got to hear more good things by waiting, but I appreciate the time and the ears. I agree on a lot of the fronts with the Coco Loco epidemic, what the ASCO, whatever you want to call it, and the Discord especially. And to touch on what Cinnamon was saying, the new entries into Cardano. I feel like there was not just a flood of genuine new Cardano entries, but also I feel like just from the Discord server, there was a little infiltration, maybe even from the ETH side, judging by some of the conversations, which was interesting conspiracies to hear people talk about. But going back to what Cinnamon said, I think that, yeah, we do need to help educate the new ones that come in, and Gary Vee influencer idea, I think, is a wonderful thing. We need influencers with positive mindsets who focus on teaching people. And yeah, there's that. I actually had another thing I wanted to talk about regarding NFTs, and that was physical assets tied to NFTs, such as like land property, vehicle ownership, and estates and things like that. And what you guys think?
Can we pause just for 2 seconds? I would want to get to that.
Yeah.
I only want to ask Patrick Tobler, did you have anything to add on sort of the Coco Loco stuff? I know that was something important to you. So, and
sure.
Drip, why don't we come back to you after that? But Patrick, just because I think it's relevant to keep that conversation thread going before we shift.
Sure. Yeah, I only just joined, so I didn't really catch all the conversation before that. But yeah, it was an interesting experience for sure. I gotta be honest, they used NFT Maker Pro, right, for the backend. I didn't implement that for them, so they only used the API that many other projects also used, and built a front end around it basically. And many things happened which were suboptimal or horrible to say, and they didn't really listen to my not to throw them under the bus. They've done a great job in the end, and they tried really their best, but they didn't really listen to a lot of the recommendations that I gave, like putting Cloudflare in front and captchas in front and stuff like that. But to be fair, I think there hasn't been any NFT drop in Cardano history which has gotten that much attention. I mean, they had like 6,000 or 7,000 followers before they even dropped, which is amazing. And we had literally record numbers of people on the website, like 6,000 in 1 second, apparently, according to Cloudflare. And many things failed. I mean, most of the front end stuff failed, but there were also some problems with my API, because my API I at the moment can't handle 6,000 requests in 1 second, and I've put like a rate limit in and everything, but it got overwhelmed. So I'd say the whole situation was very unfortunate, I think, and very stressful for me personally. I mean, you've probably seen my thread. It has been a crazy weekend, and the weekend isn't over. There's more to come. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say. If you have any specific questions, I'm very open to answering them. But just be assured, we all tried our
but
best.
your thread made me kind of like I shed a sort of proverbial tear for you, because like you're doing such a great job, man, and I know what you mean when you feel like you're sort of responsible, but like there's only so much you can do. So the sentiment is beautiful, but don't put that on you.
Yeah, I'm just going to chime into that and say, Patrick, you've done amazing work, even though I don't understand half of it. But the other half of it is people can take your tools and mess up, and you can't take responsibility for that. So, yeah, just you've done amazing work, and don't beat yourself up over other people's mistakes.
Yeah, thank you for that. But I also need to say some good words for them, because they really tried their best. I mean, I wasn't the only one with sleepless nights there, and they had like a few developers, and then they changed development teams. I think there will be a post-mortem out at some point. And we've gotten some very increased activity. We have literally bots spamming the endpoints, and somehow, of course, exposing the endpoints wasn't like a good thing to do from the front end side. That shouldn't have happened, and that's very important for projects using NFT Maker and any API really. But it's a cruel world, and people get very attached or really want to make money in crypto land, and that leads to situations like that.
And we shouldn't pretend that that's not going to continue happening. So
absolutely,
money is a powerful motivator.
Yeah.
Talking of prices, we have the creator of Unsigs
Yeah,
on,
watch out.
the man himself, who has come to Epochs End previous time. So thank you for that, and welcome back.
Well, I'm probably like the person least interested in the price of Unsig, so I give you minus points for that segue. But yeah, I get it. Guru, nice to be back. It's 7:54 a.m. and I apologize for being late.
No, thank you for making it. I know you're in a Japanese time zone. Sebastian, are you still in Japan, or have you moved?
Yep, I'm in Tokyo.
Well, I did want to kind of go back to Crypto Drip, who was trying to sort of shift a little bit to kind of NFTs and go from there. So Patrick, thank you for kind of the chiming in. Crypto, where were you going next?
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to say, thank you to Alex for changing my life and my family's life. And I was also wondering about generative art as it pertains to fractal trees and things like that. Like, I don't know if it's possible. I would love to have a digital frame on my wall where an NFT fractal tree just kind of regenerates throughout the day, if that's possible. But yeah,
I'm gonna
move towards.
say, Crypto Drip, this is not where you were going
I
before,
know,
but
no, no, that
I
was.
mean, it's
I
okay.
just
It's
saw
okay.
Alex. I just saw Alex. I had to say it. I had to mention it. But what I wanted to talk about was I'm interested in actually funding something like this. After smart contracts, of course. But I'm curious to know: can you do a deal with a manufacturer where you create their pink slips for maybe 5 or 6 models, and you nest NFTs into the pink slip NFT for the paint job or the interior or turbo or something like that, and you can then convert what would have been a vehicle that is normally sold for cash off an assembly line to a vehicle that is mostly or maybe only obtainable through digital transfers, digital transactions, or facilitated transactions.
Who wants to take that?
I cannot do that.
Are you talking about tying a real world asset to an NFT? And then I didn't quite get the whole question.
Yeah, actually, that would be the idea.
I actually have a Taiwanese friend who does like OEM manufacturing for Japanese vendors as like a, what do you call it, supplier, and he's pretty interested in making like a e-ink paper display together. That is, basically like a little Arduino or embedded microcontroller, probably using something like Frog, Adoja's, Cardano integration to. Oh, sorry, I'm just making my son breakfast right now, but it should be possible to sign a transaction and then basically display the NFTs in a wallet to a kind of a display that's tied into that unit. For the other stuff, it gets a little bit more difficult in terms of like how do you get a court to recognize that this NFT is actually tied to the ownership of something else. And I think Muse or Ryan from Muse has talked a little bit about these things being recognized in a court of law, according to him. But I'm going to make a sandwich right now while I listen to the conversation because I have a hungry 3-year-old right now.
Thank you, Mona.
Do not mess with that.
Yeah,
go do it.
Yeah,
thank you for trying to do that.
I was thinking, as you're mentioning about Frog and all that, I was thinking that in the courts also, maybe, a first time attempt at this with a high ticket item would be something that might convince the courts to do something regarding being able to make laws about it or build smart contracts maybe involved with it as well. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know too much about it. I'm not a programmer. I'm more into marketing and video games and cooking food for customers at the restaurant.
But this is where we should take a step back on what's going on more broadly just outside of the Cardano ecosystem, because of like CryptoPunks, for example, or Bored Apes or whatever it may be, that are getting put into things like Sotheby's and getting sort of pushed into Visa buying them, right? What that really is doing is entering the credibility of the concept of an NFT. And thanks Ethereum for sort of paving the way. We'll be happily taking up where you're leaving off, but appreciate they're the ones that are getting it started, right? Because me going to point to Visa buying one is a very different thing of me trying to convince someone that an NFT is even like a reasonable investment or idea. So this is where looking across chain and looking what's happening in the broader ecosystem is important, because those innovations or those pushing forward, help us too. And that's where this bridge of trying to find the like-minded folks that will hopefully come to Cardano once they see the the better technical aspects or the cheaper aspects, whatever matters to that person. We don't want to push away the idea that those people are making inroads, and we can just we can benefit from it, which is great.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to add two things to that. One is we sometimes assume that digital signatures are going to be difficult in law, but actually that's already been done. The internet, when it came, the 1990s, it went to law, there's case law. So for me, I don't think that's actually the biggest challenge. The more interesting thing would be where you have contracts with, let's say you as an individual are contracting with a smart contract or a blockchain, how is that relationship recognized in law? Because a blockchain or a smart contract doesn't actually have a legal well, doesn't exist as a legal person. So in law, in English law anyhow, you have a legal person is a human person or some sort of corporate body or a trust or what have you, some sort of vehicle. Now, if you have a smart contract, let's say that it's doing some sort of functionality and you have a contract with it. Say you're Oracle, you provide some information and then it pays you. Now, is that a employment contract? Is that a service contract? And who are you contracting with? So for me, that would be the more interesting angle.
Thank you.
Quick
Thank you,
sandwich.
guys.
I know in the States that like this was kind of done in the railroad era, right, where corporations became recognized as like legal persons. Um, and maybe that's going to dovetail with the Wyoming stuff that's going on, where a DAO is kind of a recognized legal entity or formation. So that might kind of have some intersection there, where not all smart contracts would be a person, I guess, but at least ones that were governing some kind of organization might be.
Yeah, and I think that's the area that's a bit grey at the moment for blockchain and smart contracts. But again, a lot of these things.
Well,
Sorry, go on.
and to that point too, right? They like I think some of the better sort of initial use cases are maybe where you started before, Guru, where just getting a better trusted source of data, which has already sort of had that precedence, is probably more important than the corporation at first, right? So whether it's property rights, whether it's water rights, whether it's whatever items, insurance, contracts, whatever it may be, starting there, I think is probably most important, just to get it in the middle of the process, because that's when people start talking about the benefits of it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Because we like to hear from new people. If you have spoken, if you
You
would
can drop me.
kindly drop down, then oh, perfect. Thank you, Crypto Drip. Anybody else who hasn't spoken and would like to speak? Because we've gone on for almost 2 hours now, so we're going to call it a day soon. So speak now, forever hold your silence, or at least till the next epoch.
I would like to speak if it's possible. My name is Mateusz from Cardano Funds. I have actually two questions. One question is to Sebastian, and another question is to Monad Stake Pool. So the question to Sebastian would be, is there any technical risk in delivery of Milkomeda side chain? Like this idea, for instance, of wrapped smart contracts, it's quite new. I mean, it's amazing, but it's quite new. There could be like a technical risk there. And the question to Monad Stakepool I have is whether he's still trying to do something around insurance and was it earthquakes or something like that?
Sebastian, you want to go first?
Yeah, so I can take. As I mentioned earlier in the call, I'm not sure if you were there before, our sidechain, we got some initial funding from Epochs End to start the development. The proposals to kind of build funding higher board.
Sorry, Sebastian, your connection or your mic is cutting out. I don't know if
Is it everyone?
It is for me. I don't know if anybody else has the same
It's
problem.
cutting out for me too.
Maybe I'll go and then he can come back at the end. We can try to swap if his connection issues work. So the insurance thing, yes, the idea that I was quite interested in was something called parametric insurance, which is basically cutting out the whole claim verification and all this kind of manual work around, how do you say, verifying that the damage occurred. And the way that would be possible is that you're not actually insuring against damage occurring, but you're insuring the kind of underlying cause of damage. And one small issue with that is that the chance of an earthquake happening in Tokyo is X, and then the chance of your house actually being damaged by that earthquake is Y. So these are kind of like multiplicative risks. where just because an earthquake happens in Tokyo doesn't mean your house will be damaged. So the cost would usually be higher for underwriting a policy of type earthquake happening. However, that is kind of mitigated by you don't really need earthquake coverage for earthquakes below some level in Tokyo, right? I think most recent houses, are designed to withstand up to like an 8.0 earthquake, like dusting dirt off their shoulder. So you would probably only need to take out a policy for earthquakes above an 8.0. The whole project has kind of been put on pause for a little bit. I'm actually in talks with Guru on the side, trying to figure out how to do this, but I don't really want to do it as a typical tech startup where we like incorporate and get running. So now that Unsigs has basically allowed me to be financially independent, um, we don't have to raise money the way that I was trying to a few months ago, where I was talking to my VC friends and we kind of got $1 million put together. But if we go down that route, they're going to own 30% of the company, and we're going to have to, how do you say, like go incorporate and go down that path. And I think for this to make sense, the key problem that I kind of think is the issue in the insurance business is that because of all the different jurisdictions and legal requirements, insurance is like 10% of the global economy, but the largest player only has like 3 to 4% of the market, which is a very weird thing in today's age, where usually winners win big. Companies like Apple or in the past Intel, not so much Intel anymore, but these big players clean up, and number two is like a distant number two, and number three is even more distant than that. It's very strange to have such a fragmented business for something that's such a large part of the global economy. And so I think that offering this parametric insurance, which can be offered to anyone from anywhere to anywhere, would be quite disruptive actually for this old legacy business. And insurance is kind of at the bottom of the financial pyramid. So it's something I'm still interested in working on, but a little bit more complicated to figure out how to do it the right way. Sorry if that was too long of an answer, but.
Oh, dude, everybody loves insurance, man. It's the sexiest topic there is.
It is a very sexy topic.
That's so funny. Like, just quickly to touch on that, right? Like I also, I lived in the States for a while, and insurance was such a a shitty product. Like you pay it, and then every now and then like you need to use it and apply for it. And I think that's really different than I've told this story a few other places, but when I was working in India for 3 years, my colleague was like this AIML researcher who worked on like the design of the original stream processors for the Radeon GPUs. I think it was Bill Daly was the lab he was in. I forget the name exactly, but he has a story that he's from a small village in Andhra Pradesh, and his father was an alcoholic farmer who killed himself at 13 or 14 years old, and like that happened because there was no rain that year, and because there was no rain that year, he like didn't see a way forward for his family, and it was just like such an amazing thing that to me that something as fickle as the weather could affect a family like that. And when you live in India, you every year during the monsoon doesn't hit a certain area due to climate change and all this other stuff. And so like thousands of farmers, it seems like every year, go through this same thing where they just give up. And I think that being I said that I want to start with earthquakes because earthquakes have a quite simple representation from a data model. They have an epicenter and a magnitude, and there's many trustable sources of this information from academic sources or other governmental sources. And the larger an earthquake is, the more people detect it. But the real kind of end game is to monitor like global weather satellite data and be able to underwrite a policy for a couple US dollars for that cost a couple US dollars in terms of premium, and maybe underwrites a couple $100 of coverage for like if rain up to this amount doesn't occur in your locality, then it pays out, right? But that has a lot more difficulty in terms of knowing where you are and understanding did rain occur there or not, and it's not quite as clean, I think, as the source of truth of earthquake data. So that's where we're coming.
You can use Cardano trees. They track the rain.
Exactly.
I'm actually not. That's actually not a bad idea, by the way.
Yeah, I would just add to that conversation about insurance and microinsurance, because that's been a passion of mine, something that I've been really interested in long before I got into crypto. And I remember a while back, I came across this project where they were selling sort of credit card sized pieces of paper, basically almost, and it was basically an insurance policy. And what would happen is you could buy as many of these cards as you liked, and they had a little measuring tape on one side, and you could basically, if it flooded above a certain level and the card dipped and it was above that level, and yeah, that was a quick way for people who are, you imagine in many developing countries, reading, writing, technology is a big issue. So this was interesting for me because it was showed a way of claims handling that was easy to understand. So you dip this card into the flood level, and if it was above a certain level, you could get paid out. And the more cover you needed, the more cards you bought. You couldn't really scale that previously, but now you can. And I think that is a great opportunity and a chance for us to show the power of blockchain in terms of having a trustless source of protection from financial shock. Because when I've thought about this a few times and I've gone through it in my head, the best way to explain it is just to say it's protection from financial shock. Because we can't fix somebody's house, so we can't undo the damage. But what we can do is allow them to pay a premium to protect themselves from that financial shock. If it doesn't rain for a year, you're not starving, or because it's not a charity, right? It works on probability and numbers. But if you look at old insurance models, most of the money actually comes from investing the capital, not from the underwriting. And the beauty of the Cardano blockchain is that if you have a smart contract that runs insurance and is holding capital in reserves, you can stake that, earn a regular return, and therefore you're getting money on your capital, which means you can write more competitive premiums. So that really got me thinking. And I think Monad, when you're ready, and when we get a bit more information about how things are going to fall into place, I'm not in a rush on this because I'd rather get it right. And yeah, let's continue that conversation because I think it's fascinating.
Just because we have a great audience here, I've actually had initial talks with Tweeg, who are the people who are behind Plutus, I believe. Sebastian can correct me on that. And we've kind of talked about what it would take to prove this out as a POC or minimum viable kind of product. And if there are any other Plutus pioneers in the audience who would be interested in doing this, please get at me or at Cardano Guru in the DMs, and we can try to talk about this. One of the biggest constraints right now is just Plutus developers and that kind of thing. So it would be interesting.
Sebastian, if you're looking for a challenge, we have one for you.
At DC Spark, we have so many things to work on. We could hire 100 people and still not have enough people for all the things we want to build. So unfortunately, we're not looking for more projects. We are desperately looking for people.
That's bad for our project, but bullish for the space. So thank you. That's interesting to know. And I think generally, Manoj is right. There's a lot of shortage, but considering how many people are going through the Pioneer project, and there are people who are previously building on Ethereum that are now actively building on Cardano, and they're bringing their knowledge base and their experience, and they're also learning about Plutus and smart contracts. So I think from that side, I feel quite positive about the space. But yeah, I mean, decentralized insurance, it's not going to be an easy nut to crack, but whoever gets it right, it's going to be an amazing big bang project. Sorry, who else wants to speak? Because we've got space if anybody wants to come on.
Sorry, so earlier when I was speaking, my phone just crashed on me, so I had to restart my phone. So sorry about that. So I want to talk about the risks involved in Milkomeda. So as I mentioned earlier, we got some initial funding from IOHK and Mergo and other such entities, and that involved money to get us started. And so we hired kind of talent that we thought could help with exactly this. So that's why we hired Nicola Di Prima, who was the person in charge of the architecture of both Jormungandr and Catalyst. And he is a cryptographer. So he wrote the cryptography for both the Haskell code base and the Rust code base for ITN. So he's like a really good person to have on board to make sure we get everything right. both from implementation point of view, but also, from a Cardano knowledge point of view, and also from a cryptography point of view. Now, obviously, we're, looking for other parties to help, audit code and everything else that goes along with making sure we do things properly. But obviously, we want to get this done by the end of the year. So we are trying to, launch, the minimum viable set of features that we can get away with for the first version. And that's why I mentioned earlier, we're going with some trusted Ethereum clients and, not trying to push the envelope too much for the initial release. And we're going to hopefully continue working on Milk to, add more side chains and add more support protocols in the future.
Thank you, Sebastian. That's helpful and good to know. Is there anybody? Because I'm going to cut off soon. Just I think in 15 more minutes, and then we're going to call it a day. So, anyone who hasn't spoken before who'd like to speak, request now. And anyone who's got speaker rights hasn't spoken, if you've got something that's on your mind, please share.
Yeah, if I can add just one thing, I noticed somebody tweeted something I mentioned in this call that's kind of taken off. That tweet's kind of taken off, so I want to just address that real quick. So I mentioned very briefly, delegating to single pool operators will help everybody for smart contracts, and just to expand on what that means. So blockchains have a concept of finality, right? Whether or not a transaction is final. Now, for blockchains like Bitcoin, there is no such thing as finality. There's only probabilistic finality, right? If you wait 6 blocks, you'll get a certain percentage assurance, like maybe you're 99% sure the block will not get rolled back. And then, the more blocks you go, the more assurance, the higher probability you are of being safe. Now, how you calculate this from a mathematical point of view is, say, for in the Bitcoin case, it's, how much mining is done by adversarial parties, people who are might attack the network. For a proof of stake system like Cardano, you have to think, well, how much of the stake is being delegated to pools that might be malicious, right? And so that means that the more honest pools there are, the faster the finality, right? But you don't know how many honest pools there are, right? That's the problem. You can't go around interviewing people, asking them, well, are you honest or not? So what's the best we can kind of do from a DApp perspective? So if you're a DApp and you want to tell your users, like imagine they're using some Uniswap-like thing, and you want to tell the users, okay, your transaction is finalized, it won't get rolled back, you're safe to know that you got the asset. You have to at least wait until there's no single pool operator that can roll back your transaction, right? So imagine some pool, some single person makes 5% of the blocks on Cardano. You have to assume, at the very least, you can't have your DApp being able to be attacked by a single person, right? So it means you have to assume at least 5% of the blocks are adversarial, right? So the more stake is concentrated into a single entity, the higher chance there is of somebody trying to attack a DApp to roll back transactions for some sort of financial gain, right? And this is particularly problematic when you look at pools like Binance or 1% that own a fairly large number of stake, because it means that they could use that stake to try and attack individual dApps. And the only way we can solve this is to kind of spread the stake into as many pools as possible to lower the chance of any single person being able to attack a protocol.
Thank you so much. I really wish that some of the official channels would emphasize this more. So it's great to hear someone like yourself, Sebastian, talk about this.
Yeah, well, we tried to initially push this for Yoroi back when Shelly launched. We were considering trying to heavily penalize this kind of system, and we were also for the same reason we want to penalize pools with margins set at 0%. Because if you have a pool with a 0% margin, it means no matter how much people delegate to you, your rewards do not increase, right? So if you have a large pool with a 0% margin, you don't care if people leave your pool to a certain extent, because the amount of rewards you get does not go down, So what's your incentive to run a 0% margin pool where the incentive is to attract as many delegators as possible to accrue enough ADA to be able to attack a DApp, and by the time you've attacked it, you've made money from it, and you don't care if people leave after that point. So we kind of put out some ideas on this. We got huge pushback from the community. So we just dropped the idea and we said, okay, well, once Plutus is released, then people will realize there's a problem, and then they'll come back and say like, hey, you guys got to do something about this, and then maybe it'll be more popular at that point.
I always say that I think this comes from like a misunderstanding of focusing on the outcome of staking, which is the rewards, rather than like the purpose of staking, which is to actually secure and run the network, right? I think that we do a disservice when we focus on staking primarily as being about the epoch payouts and not about actually running and operating the network. And the way I kind of try to parse that out is from what I understand from the papers is that staking and the game theory behind it is designed, that if you operate in your own medium to long-term best interests, you will select a good stake pool to operate. And when you only focus on the epical rewards rather than on the health of the network overall, you're really doing a detriment to yourself. But I think most or a lot of people focus on the epical rewards rather than the overall health and maintenance of the Cardano network. And that's what's causing this kind of misallocation of funds across the network and into these big
I
giant
totally agree.
multi-pools.
I would just jump in here. It's Karma Pool guys. How you doing? Happy Epochs End.
Happy Epochs End.
Hey everybody. Alex, I believe, and Sebastian, you're absolutely right on. I think about this night and day, and I'm so glad to hear you guys talk about it. I'm barely holding on to enough where I can mint 1 or 2 blocks per epoch. I've had a couple 3-block epochs, and look, it's not about me. I don't care about that. I really don't. I'm in this since 2017 for a much bigger purpose. But you bring up an absolute bothersome thing here that I think what you have are so many people that are speculating in crypto. And I'm going to sound really old when I say this, and I might be one of the oldest people on this panel. I'm usually one of the oldest in every room I'm in lately, it feels like. But I got to say, there's so much speculation and people just in it for a quick buck. I had a meeting unrelated I work in cybersecurity, and I had a meeting with a client this week, and 3 guys at the table were literally talking about how they had just discovered Solana and they were going to make double their money and get the hell out. And it was so distasteful. And I don't mean to be like, I'm not trying to get high on my horse or anything, but when you hear that over and over, so many people are short timers. I just call it short time disease or short term disease. And I tried to bend their mind and educate them a little bit. And maybe I threw enough, maybe enough insight into them to make those 3 people think that there's something much bigger here, guys. These are not trading vehicles. That's not what I'm about. That's not what this is about. You do understand these are not pieces of paper to be traded the way that you would trade Coca-Cola or some other thing. Like this is bigger than that. And let me explain to you why. And I went into it a little bit without getting too deep in the weeds. But I guess what I'm saying is there are so many short-term minded people right now that the dynamic that Sebastian you just described and Alex Monad just described is exactly the dynamic that is antithetical to staking, right? It's this concept that it's all about the 4.75% or the 4.9 that somebody else can achieve. God bless them. Great. 5.1. Great. But if I come in at 4.68, am I really hurting you as a delegator? No, I'm really not. As a stake pool, am I hurting the delegator that gets 4.68 versus 4.92? Come on, guys. It would take a massive, and I'm a person with a massive pledge, but I'll tell you, it would take a massive, massive pledge for that difference to really matter in any significant way. You would have to own, millions of ADA, and there are those that do. But I guess what I'm saying is the average person, or even close to average person, is not in that situation. And I think
it would definitely be interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no,
Sorry, go.
I'll wrap it up. But I think it's really imperative, and I think about this, Alex, every day. Like, how do we educate people better around that by delegating to single pool operators like myself and many others on here that I see on here every week? You are enhancing this dynamic. You are embedding crypto into something with longevity, so that it will make it truly is Web 3.0. It truly is, the next amazing thing, probably bigger than when I experienced in the mid 90s at a tier one ISP, taking over the world, right? Before Yahoo was Yahoo. And I guess, like, I really want people to see that there's something bigger here. I mean, we all want to, be wealthy, whatever that means. But, like, for crying out loud, this short time disease that is so rampant right now drives me nuts. And, I just think there's so much importance in driving home the value of the chain itself, the diversity of the chain. Sebastian, I'll use a term that you'll laugh at, because us old timers used to think this was novel in gaming, right? We used to talk about massive multiplayer, right? Remember that term? Nobody uses that term anymore, right? Massive multiplayer. When you describe what you were trying to do with your Roy back when you proposed this greater the resiliency around not having 0% margin percentages, I would have loved that, and I get completely why the game theory would have worked out well that way. I would just say that, what we're trying to do here, folks, is make Cardano massive multiplayer in a good way. And I don't just mean people who create stake pools for the sake of creating them. That's not why I did it. It's not what anybody did on this call. We created stake pools because we wanted this thing to become massive multiplayer, as long as those multiplayers were created, we're on a level playing field. And I feel like we are so not on a level playing field right now that we really need to rethink some basic core tenets of what we're doing. I also worry incessantly, by the way, about security, because that's what I get paid to do in my day job for the last 25 years of my life. And I'll tell you this, I am very nervous about the lack of security embedded in this chain. And you're not going to find a bigger fan of Cardano. Well, maybe that's arguable, everybody on this call. But I also think we need to be very constructively critical of ourselves in the realm of security. And I've just been at this too long. There are way too many ways to perform a DOS attack, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to go into the art of the craft, but there are some very vulnerable points in this blockchain, and I worry a lot about that.
If I can tie back. So if anybody in the future tries to use this Solidity smart contract to the Milkamana sidechain, and they're like, oh man, this is taking a while to get my transaction confirmed, they should speed up the block time on Milkamana. Like, there's nothing we can do about that. The reason, like we were asked earlier, what's the block time? Said 2 seconds. We could make it way faster than 2 seconds, because it's a BFT sidechain. You can go way faster.
Yep.
It doesn't matter, because the bottleneck is the finality time on Cardano when there's some pools that own a large share of the network.
Well, Carmen, to go back to your point, I think something that needs to happen is this shift towards making this is an operating system in a way, right? So NFTs are showing, okay, well, instead of just staking, you could use your ADA to sort of invest and buy these certain things, and those have value. Because if you're talking about the difference of 5% versus 4.9%, totally agree. But there needs to be something other than just the financial gain that we talk about, right? So NFTs represent that because of the art, but what's gonna come next of these dApps, or maybe, is you need to get the people like actually using the tokens to do something, which would then, I think, change the incentive, right?
I don't know. I tend to emphasize the financial gain part, but I try to, like, when I talk to people about their staking decisions, I try to emphasize exactly what Sebastian, who's done it in a better way than I have. Like, the more operators we have in our system, the more attractive this chain is to a dApp developer who's trying to, decide what chain to land on. So I think we get a little bit, what's it, fraternicide, like when the pool operators are fighting with each other about multi-pools or single pools or this kind of thing, and people are like, why are you throwing shade at the big, pillars of the community? That only works if you think that Cardano is the only chain in existence, and that nobody has a choice of what chain to run on. But if you take a bigger picture and you look at, like, Cardano is competing against a bunch of other projects, and if we don't have a diverse, healthy ecosystem of pool operators, then why would someone go through the hassle of running their project on a distributed blockchain ledger when they could just spin up some AWS instances and have much higher throughput?
Yes.
So I tend to focus on the financial gain, but again, open their eyes that the price appreciation that's likely to occur from Cardano having the widest variety of apps, dApps, and all these other things is much, much more important to them than the 0.1 differential of this pool versus
Exactly.
that pool. And so,
But one thing to keep in mind is that this percentage reward from staking, like, this will no longer be relevant in a few months' time, even like a year time. Like, this really matters anymore. Like, the value that pools can provide through, like, rewards through NFTs, the value that pools
Yes.
can provide through secondary protocols like Milkama, which is kind of maybe one of the first ones that'll come out, but there'll be like a huge amount of them, and the values that pools will be able to extract from miner value extraction will probably greatly outweigh the base rewards you get from staking.
Yes,
And
exactly.
certain pools will take these rewards for themselves. Certain pools will hand these rewards out to delegators in a variety of interesting ways, depending on which jurisdiction they're in. But just keep in mind that this competition on, like, these small percentages of rewards based off, which parameters they set for their pools. If this is how you're advertising your pool, you're already out of date. Like, you're gonna have to change your business model.
But Sebastian, so to maybe just sort of connect these, because I think what you just said is great, right? Once you have something other to put your ADA in for, whether it's DeFi, whether it's an NFT, whatever you want to go do that is better than the whatever 4.7 to 5.1% that you get, there's going to be a different value on the speed of the of Cardano and doing it, right? So as you said before, the more stake pool operators there are, the faster the network is. So you're only going to have that incentive to get more stake pool operators when dApps come around, and you want it to be faster, right? So, like, the incentive changes, to your point.
I think what Sebastian's talking about is actually these other things that a pool operator can do to basically increase the return for their delegators, right? By running some of these other, smart contracts or other things, and then distributing those rewards to their delegators. Because at the end of the day, staking is how we secure the network, and we don't want people to be unstaked.
Well, okay, so I misunderstood that. So thank you for the correction. But does the sort of logic I just laid out make sense of once you're actually using dApps, for example, the idea of speed or the processing of those dApps being better, if the best way to do that is through more operating pools, that should drive it that way. Okay. So misunderstood, but that's a good distinction. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a concrete example, like right now in Ethereum, if you want to make sure your Uniswap transaction goes through, doesn't get front run, doesn't get anything like that, and it goes through as fast as possible, you don't increase the transaction fee, right? You pay the miners directly. This is what this whole miner value extraction field is all about. And this is a huge industry, millions of dollars involved in this. Way to pay the people who make the blocks directly to process stuff faster, process stuff in different ways, or exclude certain activity. And this is inherent to blockchain, and this will come to Cardano whether you want it or not. And how pools leverage these systems and how they take the value they gain from that back and give it back to the delegators, if they do, will be very interesting to watch. But again, all of this will be much healthier if we can get a wide variety of pool operators as opposed to a few with multiple pools.
Sebastian, what do you think is the optimal number right now? We're hovering just below 3,000. What do you think would be the optimal number? Or is that hard to predict at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about a numbers thing. It's the concentration. Like we can have 10,000 stake pools. It doesn't matter if all of them have 1,000 ADA, right?
Right.
You need the average to be balanced out. The problem we have right now is that there's not much of an incentive to redelegate your ADA, right? The majority of people delegate to a pool and then just park their ADA there because they have no real incentives to switch. Now, there is a growing incentive to switch because pools are offering, state pool offerings or like whatever the acronym was, ISPOs, I think it was, and people are starting to do NFT drops to their delegators, and in the future, people will be giving rewards in different ways, so there'll be a growing incentive to redelegate. And then there's also talk about the redelegation events. I'm not sure if Charles has mentioned that in any video. Maybe he has about some way to take money from the treasury to financially encourage people to redelegate at certain intervals to avoid stake getting parked in pools and giving a chance for new people to come in. But all this kind of stuff will happen that will kind of drive people away from the current set of pools that dominate the network to kind of a new set of people. But obviously, there's no way to know how that will play out because there's so many variables involved.
Because we did hear from Charles, and what we understood was that they would put the whole multi-pool problem to one side until smart contracts are rolled out. That's the main focus, and then they would come back to that. So I'm expecting some movement, hopefully, in the next few months, quarter or so. It'd be good to see what they come up with in terms of mechanisms, updates, or changes to encourage, I guess, more optimal delegation. One thing to add here, and it's probably a bit of a dark comment to make, but unfortunately, something that we have observed, and it's sad. Like we have people who used to be Cardano ambassadors, and now they are former ambassadors running multi-pools. And unfortunately, when they had that ambassador badge, it gave them a lot of credibility, and they used that to spread to a degree misinformation where they made people scared to move the delegation. It's like, oh, don't go to anywhere else, you might not get rewards. We'll definitely guarantee you rewards. And that kind of infected to a degree the community with this fear of moving the delegation. It's really hard to get them to change that mindset now. So we have to kind of not only educate but re-educate to a degree because people have had that fear sewed into them of, oh, if you move, you lose some reward. 'Cause I remember a very popular a YouTuber, I don't know how many pools he has, but he just said live on the show, like, if you move your stake from my pool, you'll miss rewards. I just sat there with my mouth wide open going, oh my God, I can't believe he just said that because that's totally incorrect. And unfortunately, there's no way to correct him because it's his YouTube channel. And that information is then out there. People have watched that, and that's probably for a lot of people who follow a particular person, that's probably all they'll hear. And so it's really a big challenge for all of us here to get our message out there. Unfortunately, Staple Pride is not with us today, but he did this great video. We're trying to get that circulated further. So that's kind of came up and then it's gone quiet again. So I'm going to try to push that video. Monad, you're a single staple operator, so let me know if you want a copy of the video with your ticker on it. Anybody else is a single staple operator, if you haven't got that video, you want to post it. It's a great little advert for why single staples matter in a quite a simple way about promoting decentralization and so on. We have one final speaker who hasn't spoken yet, Legal High LA. Would you like to speak before we finish the show? No, you have to come off mute if you're on mute if you want to speak. No, and on that bombshell, we shall end this show.
Perfect.
Thank you, thank you everyone. Thank you, Patrick, for coming in as a co-host at the last minute. It was really nice of you, and I think you did a great job. Thank you everyone for listening to our regular contributors, and I'll see you all again in 5 days. So
thank you,
thank you so
Darth,
much.
Darth, I saw you laugh at me, man. Not okay. Thanks, guys.
I was hoping Darth would come on and just breathe heavily into the microphone, but he didn't. So maybe next Epochs End. Thank you, everyone. Have a great one.
Guru,
I'll
you're
speak
the
to you
best.
soon.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you. Take care.
Bye, all.